Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. Thank you very much for all the kind words and love and support you've been sending to Tim. He is feeling pretty miserable. He will not be with me today on the show, and he will not be on True Crime Tuesday. But fear not, faithful listeners, we've got great shows lined up for you. True Crime Tuesday is out there today. It is a very strange story. The Felony Murder Rule. One Cut with guest Eve Pornicek. And it is an amazing story you need to hear to believe. There are so many weird twists to this case. And when is justice really served? How is it served? This kind of turns it all on its head. Who are the real victims of this crime? And I want you guys to listen and please weigh in. If you haven't subscribed yet to True Crime Tuesday, it's very simple. Just go to darknessradio.com, click on that True Crime Tuesday banner, and subscribe. It's $5 a month, and you're not locked into any kind of long contract. Do it for 1 month, and you can go back and listen to all of the archives. You can have fun in that, or you can listen to just the 4 brand new episodes that come out every week. And again, once you listen to it on True Crime Tuesday, you can continue listening to the archives. But it's only $5 a month, and that gives you access to all of the shows and all of the new shows as they become available. But this is a story I think is going to intrigue a lot of people. Plus, a good friend of mine, Sergeant Paul Navarra, joins me for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals, filling in for Tim. Now, talking about the paranormal, we've got an interesting show. I've been friends with one of our guests for a number of years, and he has been telling me some strange stories. So I thought it was time we bring him on the show to discuss this. We're going to talk about the gore and horror of the Garnett House Hotel. Our guests today, Justin Spurrier and Rob Garcia. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Now, I know about Justin, and I'll bring him in a second. But Rob, give me a little background about you. How long have you been interested and kind of into the paranormal?
Well, I've been an investigator in the Kansas City metro area for about 12, 13 years. I've had an organization here called Elite Paranormal of Kansas City for the past 10 years. And we do investigations in a lot of historical locations around the Missouri and Kansas and nationally, and we do some private residences over that time. So quite a few years I've been investigating now.
What really drew you to the paranormal? Why are you so fascinated and interested in it that you would dedicate 12 years of your life to that?
Well, I really kind of got in it more from the historical aspect. I got invited years ago now, it seems, that some friends invited me to a historical location. You know, it was kind of an opportunity to kind of do paranormal, go to this historic place, go behind the scenes where most people don't get to go. And so I was very intrigued by that because I have an education in history as well as computers. So, so I was very interested in that aspect. And as time went on and I began to experience more things, the paranormal part became bigger and bigger and bigger. And after a while, it became just as important as the history part. So that's kind of my angle and how I got into it.
Did you have experiences yourself growing up?
I had some, what I would call dreams where individuals who had passed away, which I didn't know they had passed away, showed up in my dreams talking to me. Mm-hmm. And then to come to find out later on, like one would be my grandfather who told me, who came to me in a dream with my mother who passed away when I was 13. So they're like talking to me in this kitchen, and then I get a phone call a day later saying, hey, your grandfather passed away from a heart attack. So those kind of things were very intriguing. I did have some out-of-body experiences as a child, but nothing like a haunting or anything like that in my house. It was, it was very normal childhood in Hannibal, Missouri, so nothing really crazy.
So, Justin, all of your friends are insane. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Pretty much, yep. And you're a friend of mine. So
I know. I fit into that category. Introduce yourself to our audience and your interest in the paranormal as well.
Sure. My name is Justin Spurrier, and I've been investigating the paranormal or researching the paranormal for a number of years. It's actually my 25th year of doing heavy research. Basically, I consider the moment I grabbed my first camera and said, all right, this is it. I'm going to find out what's going on. I was 14 years old at that time, but I had been having experiences since I was about 4 or 5. Was the first one that I can actually recall. And what had happened was I woke up from a dream. I assume I was dreaming. I don't know. I saw these lights in my room, and I rubbed my eyes, and I was looking around, and these things were just buzzing around the room, and I can hear all this talking going on. So I got up, and I went to the bathroom down the hallway. I figured by the time I did my business and came back, that was going to be gone, I guess. So anyways, I go back about 10 minutes later, and it's still going on. And it was frightening a little bit. They were swooping down and hitting me in the chest, and I could hear them talking and laughing. So I finally fell asleep, and then it was from that moment on, it seemed like this just never stopped. Everywhere I went, I was having some sort of an experience. So it's been going on a long time. And I grew to appreciate the fact that I can see these things and have these experiences because so many people don't. So I started buying equipment and getting out there and learning as much as I could.
Now, you probably have, I would guess, probably one of the largest ITC collections of these spirit boxes and radios. How many are you up to at this point?
I don't think I've ever counted them. I really I liked them for collector's standpoints. I don't use a lot of them. I look at it as,
and you just look at Playboy for the articles too, right?
Hey, this is true. I really don't. I don't use a lot because a lot of the creators or builders of these devices have passed away, and they're considered valuables in the community in the paranormal field.
Wait a minute.
And to me,
how many of the creators of these have passed away? I didn't realize that. Maybe if you're considering making a spirit box, it's not a good plan, Justin.
It seems a little. Yeah, there's been a few people that have made these, and they made a very small number of them before they had passed away. And, some of them had made several, I guess, depending on what you call a few, but there's as little as 8 and up to a couple hundred. But we're not talking about the mass-produced SB7s and things like that, where there's thousands out there. So these were handmade, and a lot of them, each one was different. So I like to collect them and look at them and hear my wife yell at me, "What? Another one?"
Well, speaking of having your wife yell at you, you go from the passion of collecting these things and putting yourself out there investigating and researching to suddenly you find yourself the co-owner of a haunted house, a haunted hotel, not an attraction, but an actual location with a very dark history and story and a very active haunting that continues today. How did this place come to your attention to begin with?
Well, I met Rob not too long ago, a few years ago, and we were introduced through a mutual friend. And he likes the historical places, and he was trying to find something to do around here, I guess. And as was I. I was traveling to Gettysburg and Tucson and doing these tours it's a very long drive. I like to drive when you have so much equipment you can't really fly, so I'm taking all my equipment across the United States. And I finally told my wife, I said, I want to get something a little closer to home. So Rob and I put our heads together. We started looking, and we'd actually decided on another location. And I think we had all but signed off on the place. And I had this voice in my head that said, check again. And I think I remember Rob saying, why are you checking again? And I said, look at this. You got to see this. I just did a quick search, and exactly halfway between him and I, this place had came up for sale. And we found out later that it was only going to be listed for a week before it was destroyed. So it was.
So they were going to tear this down.
Strange thing. That was the plan. From a lot of people in town wanted to see it tore down because it was very old and it was on a corner, and the corner has been cleaned up. So all the other houses around it, so it's the only thing standing there. So I think it was an eyesore to some people. People like Rob and I saw it as a beautiful thing, but yeah, a lot of people wanted to see it go. So
now, were they pretty public about the idea that the place was haunted?
Not at all. No, in fact, I don't know. I don't think anyone really has that mindset here in the Bible Belt. A lot of people don't even think about that. They always saw it as, the house that has a little bit of a lean to it because it's got this little lean going on for the last 100 and some years. Okay. So that's what they knew it as. The doctor's office is what it was, and that's what they knew it as.
Well, Rob, I was told you are the grand historian of the Garnett. Can you talk to me about this? 1858, that's when this building was first erected, correct?
Right, that's correct. The building was erected in 1858 by a gentleman named D.W. Houston, who was kind of one of the founders of the town of Garnett. He built the house for his wife. Was pretty much two rooms down, 2 rooms up, and his wife didn't like it because she said it swayed in the wind. So soon thereafter, it was turned into a hotel. He kind of like loaned it out to another gentleman, and then they made it into a hotel and began to add on to it. Now, they first made it a hotel. They put a candle up in one of the windows where the attic space is, and you could see it for supposedly 9 miles, and people would come there, and that's the place they would stay while they had their homes built in the area, because prior to that, it was all log cabins in the area. So as time went on, the building expanded, and they would have up to 20 families shoved into this place or outside of it, staying there as they migrated to Kansas, because that was the time of the settlement from the east. And soon thereafter, as it was a hotel, it became the center of the Underground Railroad in Kansas. And the word is that John Brown, the famous abolitionist in the late 1850s, hid slaves that he had freed from Missouri and brought over into Kansas. And then they would move them on to Canada. So they would hide them in the attic upstairs. And that's part of the history that we've uncovered. So you have this building that's just this little board and batten structure, but it's slowly growing, and it gets up to about 15 hotel rooms. And during that time, we have a few events that happen that are, pretty horrific. There was a freed African American gentleman that lived in the attic. It's a finished room up there. It's pretty rough now, 160 years later, but he went there during 1864. They had a lecturer in town, a phrenology doctor, had come to lecture in Garnett. And phrenology, for those who don't know, is the study of the shape of your head determines your intellect. So back then, that was a big deal, and everybody that was an adult would turn out for that event. So down the street, about a block and a half away, there was a lady named Mrs. Duran. She had a grown daughter. The grown daughter went to this lecture. Mrs. Duran stayed behind, reading by the fire. This gentleman named Mr. Warren came out of the attic, for whatever reason, went down the street, saw Mrs. Duran reading by the fire, grabbed an axe from the wood pile. I guess he decided he was going to rob her, went into the room, broke into the house, pretty much just walked in, hit her across the back of the head with the blunt end of the axe, knocking her unconscious, has his way with her, begins to rob the house. Mrs. Duran wakes up, comes to, tries to escape. John Warren cuts her off, and he has his way with her again. And then he hits her with the blade end of the axe this next time, nearly severing her head. Now, we don't know if he felt remorse or what happened. He ran out, supposedly threw the axe in the wood pile, went back to his room, and went to sleep. Well, the daughter comes back from this lecture. She finds mother, puts out the word to everyone. Now, at that time, most of the young men were gone away in the Civil War, so all the older men put out a posse, and they start hunting high and low for who could have done this, and they find bloody clothes, which leads them back up to John Warren in this attic. So they go up there, and they drag him out, and they drag him downtown, and they take him before this commission that they created, and got him to confess. Supposedly they found bloody clothes under his bed up there, and they got a confession out of him, and he got a quick trial, and then they hung him downtown from the jail, the unfinished rafters of the unfinished jail. That's where they gave him a hanging, and everyone turned out from miles around. It actually made the New York Times, this event. And the thing is they beheaded him after the fact and gave his head to the phrenology doctor for study, and then his body back to the Negro community for burial. So we have this gentleman who stayed in that attic that was basically an axe murderer.
And that was actually, if I don't mind, that was actually when the house was new. I think the house was only seven years old at that time.
Yeah, that was 1864.
So it's right in the very beginning stages of this.
And he was Mr. Houston's hand servant, so there's no reason to know why, he would suddenly go out and do a crime like this out of the blue, which is pretty much how they describe it.
Yeah, we had found articles of him at dinner, with the Houston family, and they were a very upstanding family. He was there, like he said, his right-hand man for everything he needed. He was invited to all the dinner parties and everything. So why he did that, we're not sure, but that's what the newspapers seem to show.
And you read these kind of stories and realize that this person, was almost kind of part of the family, right? I mean, is that a fair assessment?
That's kind of the way I take it.
And then it goes horribly wrong. I mean, this goes on. Do you believe that he was not really the perpetrator of this crime? It was somebody else? Or do you believe that there was maybe a darker force at work at this home that may have changed him?
I think there's those that think he might not have been the perpetrator, but, there's also that possibility that something at the house could have changed him.
Yeah, if we're diving into the paranormal side of things, I did receive quite a few messages from people who were said they were psychic and they were sensitive and they were picking up all this stuff, and a few of them actually said that they don't feel he did it because they were seeing possession, and that he did do it, but that he was actually possessed by something that was already there prior to.
But again, then we're kind of
house being built.
Right. We're relying on the machinations of a psychic or a medium without knowing. And unfortunately, that's the tough part when you're dealing with mediums. You don't know if it's, especially in that aspect. If somebody comes in and says, hey, I pick up, there's a John here and he murdered somebody with an axe. And then you go and you find in the records a John murdered somebody with an axe. That's something that's intriguing. But yeah, talking about this type of aspect, it gets hard to actually corroborate that part of the story. But that this history is going on. This dark kind of violence is around this property. Was there anything else about this property specifically, Rob, that stood out to you regarding its history, ancient burial grounds or war field or anything like that?
Well, we haven't found anything about ancient burial ground, but the town of Garnett at that time was very much a lot like Abilene or Tombstone or Dodge City, where it was very wild, very violent. There was a lot of gunplay. There's open air brothels downtown, all that sort of thing. So the people that would be coming and going at an Old West boarding house / hotel, there's probably all kinds of events that we don't hear about. Plus the disease factor of Easterners coming to a wild area and living. So we'd probably, and I kind of really think this, we really probably don't know all of the darker episodes that might have went on surrounding that hotel. I think there's things that we still are yet to uncover that we're still searching for.
Well, if it wasn't being advertised as a haunted location, isn't that kind of weird that you were both drawn to this location and to buy it, to purchase it, to do something with it without even realizing that it was really haunted?
Well, yeah, that's the next strange story, I guess. We got to go look at this. All the article said was it was advertised that it was an old hotel that had a couple famous guests, and they named off just a couple. We ended up finding several more who had stayed there, but we said we got to go look at it. I mean, it's old. You can't find something that old in Kansas. That's extremely old.
Well, don't tickle us with that. Who are the famous guests that stayed there throughout history?
Buffalo Bill Cody, Wild Bill Hickok, Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, Bell Starr, rumored Jesse James, because the James brothers frequented the area. Were you going to say something, Justin?
No, I was just going to say, of course, John Brown, and then maybe Jesse James and possibly Harry Houdini, as he was in town then too, when that would have been the only hotel in the area.
In its later years, the Houdinis would come to Garnett and do their spiritualist sessions at the Opera House, him and his wife. So I've had some other locals tell me that's pretty likely they stayed there as well.
We do have some of the guest check-in list. The newspaper, it predates the newspapers. This whole town, at least it predates anything that we can find in the archives online by several years. But then as the years go on and the hotel changes owners and such, the newspapers start posting some of the guest list, the sign-in sheets. So unfortunately, we don't have very many of them, but we got a couple, and those are all leads we haven't even looked into as to who these everyday people were. So we did find the local newspaper. Actually, one of the reporters did some research on our behalf and found out that one of them was it the governor of New Mexico had stayed there. We didn't know who it was, but she had done the research and found out there was some other people that were actually somebody doing something big with their lives somewhere else in the country, just passing through. So
sure. All right, so you've got this great kind of history to it. Was there any other darkness associated with this throughout the years that you have uncovered at this point, or was just that murder and then the hanging kind of the main point to this?
Well, there was the Black Widow murderess who was kept there as a prisoner for 4 months.
I love how you're just so casual. Well, I mean, there was the Black Widow murderess who stayed there. What do you mean? Black Widow murderess? Okay, it was a hotel. Why was she being kept there?
Well, in that time, they didn't have up until the almost end of the Civil War, they didn't have a town jail. So there was a lady who came to the area, and she was a bachelorette, and she was introduced to a gentleman named Mr. Phillips. Her name was Sarah Potter, and as was in those times, the courtship was quick, and they were quickly married. And suddenly, not soon thereafter, Mr. Phillips became ill and passed away. And they discovered that she had gone to the druggist and bought rabbit poison, and supposedly, I guess, to get them out of your garden. But it turns out that they kind of figured out pretty quick that Mr. Phillips probably was the one who was eating the rabbit poison. So suspicion fell upon her. They arrested her. There was a couple that introduced them. They arrested them, thinking they were in on some kind of scheme, but they couldn't prove it with them, and they released them. But the sheriff didn't have any place to put her, so they put her in the Garnett House as a prisoner. And she stayed there and could entertain her friends. They would come visit. She would eat dinner, because everybody ate at a communal table downstairs for dinner or breakfast. And then one night, a mysterious buggy came into town about 3 months later, and Sarah Phillips, or Potter, disappeared, and she was missing, and they couldn't find her. Turns out she went to Cincinnati, married some other guy, but for some odd reason, a couple years later, came back to Kansas, and they figured out who she was, and then they arrested her and they had a trial for her in Lawrence, and she was acquitted on a mistrial and left Kansas never to return, supposedly. So she actually got away with it.
Holy cow. And she got away with getting out from police custody. How did they not get her for that?
I guess it was just those times. It was.
Well, she beat us. I guess she got out of here. All right, let's move on. Next day. That's crazy.
Well, we almost have to assume that if they kept her there could have been others that were kept there as well. We don't have any proof of that, but we're still looking. So if they kept one, why wouldn't they have kept so many others? If this town was that wild and they didn't have a jail, we would assume they would have probably kept some other people, but still searching for that.
All right. Now you've got, start talking to me about this. You buy the house, the hotel. You're starting to go through the history on this. You realize what's going on. How bad of disrepair was this place when you guys first got it?
It was, well, backing it up just a notch, like when Rob and I went to go see the place to meet with the realtor, we're smiling.
That's a great story.
We're smiling because we're like, look at this is awesome. And everyone else is, probably just shaking their head like, tear that thing down. But when we walk in with the realtor, and I take a recorder with me. Didn't you take one with you?
Yeah, we were standing in the lab there.
We had took a recorder through the whole house, and never mind the fact that the house was waist to chest deep with stuff, just stuff, trash, debris, everything. it was very full, so you couldn't see a whole lot on the inside. But as we're exiting the home, we're standing in the kitchen, or the laboratory, as it's known, and the back door flies open, and all of a sudden this little girl's voice just starts talking, and it sounds like it's moving through the room. And the realtor's sitting there talking, and all of a sudden she sees my face and Rob's face, and her jaw drops open. She's like, "What?" I said, "You didn't hear that?" And Rob heard it. And so this little girl's voice just walked through the room. The door flew open, and we knew right that moment, I think, we both knew that we were going to buy that thing.
Oh, yeah. that was amazing.
Now, what do you say?
Like 15 minutes.
Let me ask you one quick question. I'm going to throw a hard question at you guys. I hope you don't mind. But there's a lot of people around the United States now looking to cash in, or suddenly their hotels become haunted because it's trendy and vogue, right? And everybody wants to get your foot in the door and have a haunted bed and breakfast or haunted hotel. You guys obviously involved in the paranormal, obviously interested in something like this, knowing that you're going to go to a historic site that's, over 100 years old. We know that you were going in hopes that there would be some kind of paranormal activity there. What is it that you can tell people regarding the actual experiences taking place there, as opposed to, these two guys are just trying to cash in on the paranormal?
Well, I mean, for me anyway, it was more about getting our own place to investigate, instead of having to wait for something to open up or paying your way into somewhere. So for him and I, being right between us, that was the biggest draw. For me was that, hey, I could drive 45 minutes and go to this really old place, and I know there's something going on there, because I've already experienced it. And then, of course, we would like to have other people in to check it out as well, because we're excited about this. But yeah, I mean, our intentions were not right off the bat to just start selling tickets to get people in there. It was truly about repairing the place and saving history, because so many people just don't do in this area. Things get bulldozed very quickly if they're not being used. So. And Rob and I know that things don't last here like they do out east. They'll keep a lot of that stuff, but
There's
here
no
it just don't happen.
around here.
There's nothing. So This was really a true find for us.
So you guys go in, and on the first day, bang, there's
middle of the day,
right? Yeah. Middle of the day, blown open doors, little girl voices. You guys are running recorders. What did you capture?
On mine, I had, of course. If you're walking and talking and there's all kinds of papers on the ground, you never know. The contamination was great and in great abundance on that. But at the same time, there were lots of voices and whispers that, you could make out. Some of them basically questioning, on my recorder, was questioning, who are these people, or what are they doing here? Just things like that. So the very curious sounding, but yet intelligent responses.
And the little girl was just a sing-song voice, if I remember. It just kind of was like fluttered by in the recording.
Yeah, the door flew open, which was right next to me. The realtor was in the middle of the room, and you were on the other side of her, and it was just like a boom. It just walked right through the room, and I don't know if I could do that again. But
how did the realtor respond? Just trying to totally blow off? Oh, nothing to see here, folks. Keep moving.
No, I think at that point we told her, I said, listen, I've got a recorder in my pocket. I'm going to play that back. And we heard it. Unfortunately, she was talking at the time, and she heard it, but she didn't fully understand what she had heard. But you couldn't make it out other than, like you said, a sing-song type humming voice. Yeah,
it was it was just a little humming girl like coming through the room.
Now, are there any stories of little girls passing there? I mean, obviously it's a hotel, and hotels have deaths that happen all the time because people die and they're on vacation and they're staying in hotels, and that's just part of the whole deal. And for anybody out there who thinks that doesn't happen, there's probably a couple of deaths a year at every hotel across the United States. But were you able to try to attach this to the little girl or find any information on who she might be?
Not specifically.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Right. No, I don't think so. There were a lot of deaths that probably weren't documented. We found a few, things, but I guess one story that sticks out, and I'm not saying with any certainty that that's what this is or why that would happen, but there is one story about this was actually an orphan. The orphan train had stopped here, and this was the place where they took the children to start handing them out to the locals. And I know they said the crowd was so overwhelming at the house from all the local people coming to see what these children looked like and what was going on, and that they had to eventually move it to a church. And but there was the story of the little girl who had not been chosen. She was the only one that no one wanted. Oh. So I found that interesting that they most likely had stopped at other places before they had came to Garnett. Even they probably had more children, before they arrived there. I don't know. Yeah, they would just know that her parents didn't want her, and then all of a sudden, no one else wanted her either. I found that very sad, but I'm not saying that that's what we were experiencing. But we do have a little girl voice, as well as adult disembodied voices quite frequently.
Now, you're going in as investigators. You're looking at this. You're obviously going to start kind of bringing it back and saving the building, doing restoration. Has that started to kick up a lot of activity in the location for you?
Go ahead, Rob. Do you have an answer?
I think it has on some level. I think it's also there's the human interaction element. I mean, up until, and we do know that the place became a school in the late 19th century for a period of time, and then possibly a brothel at one point, and then became a private residences, and then finally it became a doctor's office for about 6 decades.
Photography studio. Also.
Photography studio. I forgot that as well. So it's had multi-uses, and the building, we have the Kansas plot maps, and the building would change configuration about every 15 to 20 years. So the whole building would change shape. So we think, though, that the people that were coming there, as far as being a school, there might have been a lot of the children coming in that from that time period as well. That might explain some of the child voices that we get. I'm not saying with certainty we know that, but I mean, we do pick them up.
Right.
And what about looking at, kind of the darkness? Here you've got a place that's got some rich history and some violence to it. Has there been any, I know you had mediums come in and say that they felt there was something there that possessed him and made him kind of commit this crime, this heinous act. But have you experienced anything weird or malevolent since you've taken ownership?
I would say yes, absolutely. I think this. I've spent a lot of nights in haunted prisons and asylums, and oftentimes alone or with just one other person. I've done the big group events, but I've always wanted to go to these places on with a smaller group. So I'll put out the money to rent these places to have the true experience. And I could say, and maybe it's just because I spend more time here than I get to, a weekend in some prison. But this place got to me on a level that none of those other places have ever gotten to me. And things don't really bother me. I never really got scared, but I really felt uneasy multiple times in this place, even in the middle of the day. It got downright freaky. And that's just the feeling, when you talk about experiences or seeing, we've definitely had hissing right in our ear, in the day, in the night, like a hiss and a snap almost together right in your ear that will just ring my ear so loud.
It's interesting that you say that. Now, are you hearing the snap prior to the hiss, or does the snap come after the hiss?
I would have to say it was the snap and then the hiss, but it was overlapping, if that makes any sense, together.
It does.
But then the hiss.
The reason I ask that is that I've talked to quite a few people that are proficient at collecting electronic voice phenomena, Mark and Debbie Constantino, who are good friends of the show, and quite a few other people, Chris Fleming and others, who have talked about the fact that a lot of times they would get this crackle and almost before they would catch an EVP, almost like it was breaking through the barrier, like it was being broadcast, and there's that second when the microphone snaps on and crackles to life that they get that forced volume. So that's interesting to me that you guys were getting that little pop before the EVP would take place as well.
And that was actually, I was showing the house to a couple people, a local group who just wanted to come and see the place. They weren't going to investigate. It was daytime. We were walking through, And I actually heard that big snap, and I thought I had kicked something on the floor, but I realized there was nothing on the floor. And everyone in front of me turned around because they heard it as well. And my ear was just blacked out, ringing so loud. And so for that to happen and everyone else to hear it, I found that really interesting, because usually it's one of those personal experiences, or like you said, captured on a recorder, which we've gotten that as well. But this one was so loud, and this was in the very beginning stages, so maybe a couple months in to ownership, that happened.
Yeah, and for about 2 months, we were just pretty much clearing out the old medical equipment that was left in there. So for 2 months, it was chest high upstairs, so we just would be there constantly hauling stuff in and out. So we would have these experiences during that time. We would be hauling out stuff, and it would be during the day even. You would hear walking up behind you while you're standing there. You would have walking downstairs, walking around. You'd have voices happening all the time, and we're standing there hauling out these giant crates of old stuff, and all the time you have this interaction. Now, just like these things happen to Justin, but it seems like different activity happens to different people. So those things like hissing, and I've heard that hissing before, like when Justin was upstairs, and it happened to him one night, and it freaked him out. But I actually was down at the bottom of the stairs, and I actually heard the hiss from downstairs. It was that loud, and a disembodied voice.
That particular night, we were doing a live broadcast. We do a lot of paranormal live streams where people can watch. And we were finishing the night, and I had set the camera at the bottom of the stairs pointing upward. And I told the viewers, I said, I'm going to go put this recorder upstairs, because we left a lot of overnight recorders running on voice activation mode to see what we could capture. And as I walked upstairs, the camera, the viewers were watching me on the live stream. And then you hear me say, no, because what had happened is something hissed at me, and I was in the dark upstairs. Something had hissed, and I treated it like it was a dog. I was like, no, and I just pointed, and just not even knowing where I was pointing. I pointed at where I felt this thing was, and I just stood my ground. I walked into the next room, and then all of a sudden there was these heavy footsteps, and I froze. I stopped in the middle of the room, and these heavy footsteps circled around me, about 3/4 of the way around me, just pretty much cornering me there. And that's when I said, that's it. I'm going to put this recorder, I'm going to go ahead and go. Well, then upon watching the replay of that live stream, not only did it hiss at me, and you could hear it, it actually hissed at the camera the split second before it hissed at me. So I'm already upstairs, and all of a sudden the live broadcast camera captures the hiss, and then you hear it again upstairs where I'm at. So lots of people have got to experience that through the live feeds. That's very neat.
We need to take a break. We will be back with more Rob Garcia, Justin Spurrier, as we talk about kind of the gore and the horror of this very haunted, famous hotel. And we'll continue talking about some of the other strange supernatural occurrences that have taken place there, both on live cameras and during investigations, what they make of it, and what's it like to own a place like this and realize that you've got something a little darker, something that's not always happy to have people there. What do you do to protect yourself and protect the people that come there? We'll discuss that and more when we return to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness.
We're back. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. I'm talking tonight with Rob Garcia and with Justin Spurrier. We're talking about the haunting and very active paranormal happenings at the Garnett House. And this is a former hotel and house which is crazy haunted. A lot of dark history to it as well. Guys, thanks a lot for hanging in. Now, I know you've got a lot of experiences, and I asked you to bring me some of the weirdest and creepiest things that have happened during these investigations and during your own stuff. So let's start getting into that. Now, have you made this available? Can people come, pay to stay the night and investigate? Is that something that's open?
Oh, sorry. I thought Rob was going to go with that one.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're actually we are doing we have ongoing renovations and construction, but we're still trying to fit everyone in that requests to stay there. So absolutely, don't hesitate to reach out because we are securing spots for people, and if something comes up, and we would gladly reschedule that if needed. But in between the construction and renovation, we're doing all we can to let people in there. So we have, made it deemed safe. We've had some support beams put in, and everything's good to go. We just want to go and do it right. So we're really spending the extra time doing everything we can from the ground up. But in between then, sure, come on out and check it out.
How do you,
oh, go ahead.
One second. I was just going to say, okay, you can protect and get, the housing board on your side and say it's safe. You've got support beams. Everything is good to go. What do you do to protect people and yourselves when you know that you've got something not so nice residing from the netherworld in your establishment? Is that a concern for you?
I would say it's always a concern for me and anyone that I bring in there. And I do use, some protection bracelets and such. I believe a lot of it resides in our faith and power in our mind, our belief of whatever your faith is or whatever that you have that's stronger than this thing. Just believing it and knowing it is the most important thing in my mind. But it doesn't hurt to have that reminder on my wrist that says, hey, step back. This is battery acid, you creep. No, it's really something that I use daily. I wear it all the time. In fact, I used to get a lot of them from you, Dave, back in the day. So I've been using them for a long time, and they work well for me. But there was one instance, and it's just weird that it happened this way. I've never been scratched. You hear of everyone being scratched. I got scratched when I went to this place or that place. And I've done it for 20 plus years and never been scratched. And this was probably 2 or 3 months ago. I was up there and doing some
summer.
Was it summer?
It was fall. It was warm out still.
It was still warm. Yeah. So I was on the roof and I was doing some repairs to the siding, and I'm up there alone. Rob had actually left to go get himself some dinner, and I'm on the phone with my wife, who supports me in every way in this field. And she's like, I had this strange dream I forgot to tell you about before you left this morning, and it involves the hotel. And she said, I had this dream. She's explaining it to me. And I said, okay, we hung up. Rob comes back and he's like, dude, what happened to your neck? And see that I could feel this cold burn feel on the back of my neck while I was talking on the phone. But I didn't think anything of it because I was out there alone. I didn't have anything to scratch my cell phone. I just figured it was one of those weird body things that happen. Yeah, you can't really explain. He turns around and I had him take some pictures, and sure enough, I had this scratch. It was probably 3.5, 4 inches long. It was a single scratch. It was welted up, and it ran from the top of my neck down to the base of my neck, and it hurt. But it was a cold burn, and it went away.
And we were outside
after a couple of days. But I was on the roof outside by myself, and I felt it happen. When it happened, I started feeling it. We were talking about, the house and some of the things that my wife had a dream about. And it was at that moment that I felt it, but I didn't think much of it because what would it have possibly been? So that was the first time I have ever been scratched, and it just so happened that it happened there at the hotel. So you never know what's going to happen, and that does concern me when people come in. But you can't, what can you do about something like that? You can't push, some sort of a protection on them if they don't wholeheartedly believe that it's going to do anything. I don't feel that it would do anything if they don't believe it. So that's just my belief.
So out of curiosity, say you're there investigating and this thing lifts somebody up, slams them to the ceiling, slams them to the floor. How much longer are you going to keep that place open?
There's a waiver for that.
Okay, there's a waiver for that. In the event of complete demonic possession, you leave everything to Justin and Rob. I get that.
There you go. No. Speaking of picking things up, this was weird. I remember when Rob and I was cleaning this place out, he comes in the other room and he's kind of half smiling but half irritated. He's like, why do you keep doing that? And I said, doing what? He goes, every time I put this pan down, you always move it back. I said, I haven't touched it. I've never touched that pan my entire life. I've seen it, but I've never touched it. And it wasn't something that belonged to the house. We had brought in some stuff from an estate sale just to kind of theme up the place because it literally had no usable furniture. And we brought this, box of estate sale stuff, and there was this copper pan, and it was sitting on top of the X-ray machine, I guess, which is still there from the doctor's office days. And for whatever reason, Rob kept putting it down, and it would go right back to where it was. I think that happened 2 or 3 times.
Every time we come back, it'd be back.
Yeah, and he was blaming me because he thought I was playing a joke on him, and I really had nothing to do with it. So, that was the first time something had started getting moved, I think. And then, we had set up other objects for them to, hopefully move, like, ping pong balls. I set those up, lock it over,
Well, we were doing the night recording at that time.
Yeah, we were doing overnight audio and capturing the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But one time the ping pong balls went missing, and it wasn't until a couple weeks later that we had a team come in, and they actually found them piled up in the attic, which we had no access to the attic. Rob had never been in the attic at that point because this was in the beginning, and we didn't have a ladder to get up there. So I had
to get on a table and try and jump up there.
And I'm a little taller, so I made the jump, and I checked it out up there, and I'd only been up there, maybe once. So this team's like, we got to get in the attic, and they go all the way back, and the attic's actually split in 2 sections. There's in the middle of the house, there's a divider with a doorway upstairs, so it's 2 rooms, and they found the ping pong balls huddled up in the back corner of the far room, which is the furthest away from the attic entrance.
Well, that's a little dramatic, huh? How do you even start to account for that? Now, are you guys running live video streams in there so people can watch from the safety of their own home if they're interested?
Well, when you say safety, like we do have a lot of live streams going, but after these live streams end, I'll get messages in our inbox that says, we're having absolute nightmares. People are having nightmares, and they're so drawn to this place they can't get enough of it. When will you go live again? When will you go live? And it draws them in, and then they get these nightmares, and they're all telling me what this thing is that's coming to visit them in their dreams, and they're all describing it exactly the same. And some people have even drawn it out and sent me sketches, and it's the exact same thing that I've seen myself and have never told anyone on any live stream what it was, and those people were sending me images that matched what I had seen. So it's very interesting. So as far as watching,
don't leave me hanging. What is this thing that you've seen? What is this thing that many people have seen?
So there's one feature that seems to hold true, even if it shifts into some different shapes at times. It has a mouth, obviously, ear to ear. So if you picture like the Joker or something, it's got the painted, it goes from ear to ear. And I've seen it in this beast form, and it's very freaky. It's got a long nose, almost like a dog or a snout-looking nose. But then again, it's got this wider appearance of the face, and you can tell that the teeth are sharp, and it goes from ear to ear. So that's kind of the sketches that people have been sending me, saying, this thing is what's coming into my house, and some people are saying it's being very inviting and saying, yeah, come and check this place out. To the point where one lady actually booked a ticket and flew across the United States to come and stay there. And she says, I will never come back here ever again. Will I come back here? This thing tricked me. It said it was going to be all right. It was going to be fun. And while she was there, she couldn't leave fast enough because she had seen this thing again. And it basically had frightened her to the point that she will never come back, she said. So it's the same thing that I had seen, and it's very scary looking, I guess you could say.
Being a father yourself, and I'm sorry, Rob, I don't know if you are. Do you have concerns? Yeah. Do you guys have concerns about attachments and things? Maybe you're protecting yourself, but sometimes we've heard these spirits will deflect and start leeching or affecting, children or family members.
I believe that can happen, and I'm always re-upping or resetting my boundaries for the house. I've lived in places my whole life that I wouldn't say that the places are haunted. It was more me. They were just attracted to me. The fact that I was able to he experienced them on ways that other people weren't seeing.
Yeah. Everything's attracted to you, Justin. I know. How about the ego on this guy, Rob?
The law of attraction. The law of attraction. No, it for whatever reason, it was just me. And my whole life, they would come, and it was a nuisance, and at times. And people would say, "Oh, this house is haunted." No, I don't think it is. Same thing holds true here. But I taught my kids from a young age. I said, "Listen, this stuff happens. When something would happen, I would say this is what it could have been if we couldn't find a reasonable explanation for what had happened." I said, "You might start having some things happen. I don't know if this is inherited or if you're as cool as I am, kids, but this could happen." And it did. My daughter is the one that it started happening to at a very young age. And this story makes me smile, but my oldest son would run into the bedroom at night. Boom, 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 boom. You hear him run across the house, hop in bed with us. Well, then when my daughter was born and got to be that age, about 5, she would climb in bed with us. And I would say, "What's the matter?" She would walk. She said, "There's a ghost in my room." I said, "What did you do? Where was it standing?" She said, "It was standing in front of my bed." And I said, "In between your doorway?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "How'd you get out?" "I walked through it." I said, "That's my girl. You just walked right through that thing." And since that day, she's not scared of any of that. And she's been able to have these experiences and come to me and say, "This is what happened." And it's neat that a lot of it's the same stuff that I went through. So she's, most of my children are handling it very well.
Now, my children are very insulated from paranormal. My son's 14 now, so of course he sees the TV shows, and they know Dad's an investigator, but there's never really been, out of all these hundreds of investigations I've done over the years, there's really never been anything that happens at my home. So I have my faith and things like that when I'm investigating to protect myself. But as far as the activity coming with me, it's never happened. And I sometimes just think, my mother passed when I was 13 and never really got to see her grandchildren. I just kind of think that, Mom's not going to let anything come through this barrier to her grandbabies. It's just, my mom was a pretty fierce woman, so that's kind of my belief there a little bit. So, but yeah, I think there's that inherent risk though as an investigator, and if someone who wants to goes out and you try to interact with the paranormal and spiritual activity, that there's always probably that possibility. I never experienced it. I can't tell you it couldn't happen though. There's a possibility. You hear about it happening.
Well, what's the most chilling thing that's occurred for you, Rob?
Now, the activity that happens for me seems to be different than for Justin. Now, see, I'll go down there and work my day job sometimes. I'll be there for 4 or 5 hours doing my desk work. And things that'll happen to me, I'll hear like someone run across the floor upstairs. And I'll hear walking. I'll hear things being thrown. Like you'll hear something go bam, and you go look, nothing's gone. Nothing's moved. So you come back down. It's almost like, hey, we know you're working, but we're going to let you know we're still around. One thing that did happen for me was one time we had some balloons these lighted balloons we were using as trigger objects at night because you could see them in the dark. And I was walking by one. We had it sitting on a candlestick. So I come walking through, and now you could say, yeah, the wind from your body would make it float off this candlestick. But when it got next to my head, you heard the audible pop of the sound you would make when you hit a balloon. And this balloon goes flying past my face, right, grazing my nose, enough to startle me. And that was probably one of the more physical things for me that happened. Now, one of the things that do happen to me is that something will walk up behind me upstairs when you're alone. Likes to wait till you're alone, and you'll hear bump, 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 and then stop. And you turn around, nobody's there. Just the other night I had that cold blast come in behind me.
Yeah.
There's an open room behind you through a doorway in the dark, and you're like, I think I'll go forward and turn around and see what's behind me because I don't like this feeling because it feels like something's going to rush me. So
and I never seen stuff that I don't act that way. So that was new to see you, have that experience because that's not usually something that you have, and to see you feel uneasy and you're like, I'm coming in there. That was, that let me know that hey, You felt something because I felt it.
I think it's different than you have more of a spiritual activity background growing up than I do. So, I mean, I'm a very experienced investigator, I think, but, I've encountered stuff in a lot of places, but, I don't experience things like you do. So, I experience them in a different way. So,
right, but,
it's just different for everybody there.
But we could both agree that in the beginning, leaving those overnight recorders was probably the coolest and smartest thing we could have done, because they yielded so much evidence, and strange things. And I'm talking about when you watch the TV shows and you see, their EVP capture and it says, "Rap," I think it said Bob, little things like, no, these were class A plus voices talking in the room with us when we're gone.
And do you have some of those on your website so people can hear them as well? So if they go check it out, there's some evidence and information on the web?
We didn't upload them there, did we yet, Rob? We were actually
we didn't.
We're talking about revamping our site.
Gathering stuff. So.
And we're releasing them because we do a lot of stuff over on my Periscope where I share all that information with the viewers ahead of time. They get to hear everything because they're very loyal in supporting this place. And so we kind of reward them with all of our evidence first. But just to explain, like, some of the stuff, in the very beginning we had captured what sounded like horse hooves or hooves of some sort walking around on the wood floor upstairs. And it didn't sound like 4 hooves. It sounded more like 8 parading around. And all of a sudden they would walk up to the recorder and there was this growl. And then you would hear what sounded like speaking in like maybe a Latin language. Another one was this man hammering or banging on something and cussing. "Son of a," and he's just hitting something with such force. And then you hear what initially I thought it was glass breaking, but now I actually believe it was chains. It sounds like chains falling to the ground and piling up. And it was so loud. And
the one where it sounded like, there was also that one time we captured, it sounded like something was just ripping the room to pieces.
Just ripping it apart, and nothing had moved.
Heck out of it, and nothing's moved.
And we actually had a neighbor who was donating some curtains because we opened up donations for the place for curtains and such. And the guy, I had been gone for about 30 minutes, and I get a call from the neighbor guy who says, I guess you're not there. And I said, no, I left about 30 minutes ago. He said, I'm going to leave these on the porch, but I want to let you know that as I was walking from the sidewalk up to the porch, I had to stop because he was with his wife. They were on their evening walk and going to drop these off on the porch. And they said it sounded like the inside of the house was just being trashed, stuff being thrown and tossed. And these aren't people who are into the paranormal at all. In fact, they have no part of it. They were just walking up to the house and wanted to let me know that, hey, maybe someone's in there. And I said, I hadn't even gone 30 minutes, maybe 20. So look around, and there was nobody in sight. So I went back up there the next day, and everything was fine. So you do get that, and to have a neighbor, say, hey, we heard that from the street. We heard it from the sidewalk. It was that loud.
We also captured the children screams at night.
Lots of children screams. Make him stop. God. Children screaming, make him stop, or please make him stop. And another one that was interesting was there's no running water upstairs as far as it sits now.
Yeah,
downstairs.
Cut off.
And we captured what sounds like a man literally right next to the recorder, mumbling, and he sounds like he's washing something. He's got maybe a wash pan or something, and you can hear the metal clanking, but you hear a lot of water splashing. I'm thinking residual on a lot of these. This went on. The file was about 9 to 11 minutes long of just this mumbling and water splashing. And it would stop for maybe 20 seconds, and then it would start up again. So it was really interesting that it sounded like it was right in the room where there's not any water running up there, and this was talking and walking around the room. And again, these were all in the very beginning stages. We had captured so much stuff. The first night I left the ping pong balls there, I came back the next day, and I said, oh, you guys didn't do anything. So I'm in the house. I'm by myself at the top of the stairs. I said, you guys didn't do anything. Ping pong balls are still there. So I sit down to review the audio, And I'm at the top of the stairs, and all of a sudden you hear those ping pong balls bouncing on the audio. You hear them bounce it sounds like a ping pong ball bouncing, almost as if someone was throwing it and then catching it, throwing it on the ground and catching it. And it started far away, and it got closer and closer, closer. Then it hits the recorder, and then it goes down the stairs. Boom, 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 boom. And then I look up at the wall, and the ping pong balls are still positioned on the shelf. And at that moment, I thought, I don't really want to be sitting here anymore. Just that to know that they can make those noises, mimic those noises, or play with my balls and put them back, whatever it was.
Pardon me? At least they had the courtesy of playing with them and putting them back. All right, guys, I know we don't have a whole lot of time left together as we continue talking about this, and it seems like this place is just off the hook crazy with activity. When you bring in mediums to these locations and something that's so powerful like that, is it hard for them to stay in a building that's this active?
A lot of times in the beginning, it was just people who said they were mediums, some of them that I knew, some of them that I didn't, who just kind of came out of the woodwork watching the live streams and said, I'm picking up on some stuff. It's crazy. There's those, and then there's the ones who you've heard about or may have heard about, and then they don't even come to the place. They'll see the place on the video, or they'll look at a picture. One guy in particular, he had never even, heard of the place, never watched a video one. He just says, he's a friend of mine. He says, tell me about this place. He said, no, don't tell me. He just send me a picture of it. So I sent him an odd picture of the back of the house instead of the front, just in case. I sent him an odd picture that he probably had never seen. And he said things that were just mind-blowing. And then he's like, I don't like this at all. He's like, something's stopping me and telling me to back off. Well, he ends up, I think it was about 6 months later, he decides to make a trip out from the East Coast, comes out to see the place. And the first night there, we did 2 or 3 investigations in a row. And the first night, everything was fine. He was like, this is not at all what I was reading. He said, this just feels different. We had a lot of good stuff happening. We go there the next night, and he says, he's shaking. He said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this at all. This is more daunting. Something very evil's going on here. And we were sitting in the living room just talking, and I've never told him what I've seen. I didn't tell him any of this stuff. And he's sitting there, and all of a sudden, his eyes get so big. I have this on camera. His eyes get really big, and he says, I'm done. I'm walking out. He's like, very nice place you got. I'm never coming back. He walks out the door, and I try to go outside to calm him down, like, what's going on? And he's acting strange. He's acting very strange. And I said, what did you see? He said, I don't want to talk about it. I said, tell me what you saw, please. And he says, the best way I can describe it is, and I said, ear to ear, and he just melted. Oh my God, he freaked out. He said, yes, it looked exactly like the Joker face, kind of half clown but half beast, and it was staring at him from the doorway. Well, this particular doorway, we have a lot of shadow figures that are seen on the first floor, and this thing was staring at him. And so I knew he had seen what I had experienced before. I said, okay, we'll leave. I go back in to set my recorder down on the back of the recliner to run overnight audio as we're leaving. And that same thing that he just saw, it had to have been about 7 feet tall. It just peeked its head around the corner of the doorway that was right in front of me, almost as if, I pictured it as he's like, freaking me out, right. The silliness. And it peeked its head around the corner, and it was pure black, but you could see all of the facial features. You could see the mouth and the big wide eyes, and it was in a human form at this point, but still had that ear to ear smile with sharp teeth. And yeah, I took a break after that. A couple weeks, I didn't go back at least.
Oh, suck it up.
It was very unnerving. There's a couple times we've had to take breaks, or I know I have. It just gets to you, and my wife says, you probably need a break. You're kind of becoming a jerk or something. I come back home and I'm in a bad mood, and I have no reason to be that way. And sure enough, I believe just spending too much time in there. But like a lot of other people, I was very drawn to the house. I couldn't wake up fast enough and make that hour drive to get back and work on this place. So, yeah, it was kind of drawing me in. And now I'm over that. I don't investigate there as much either. So we're spending our time repairing and working, planning. And back then we were just so excited that we could get all of this evidence so easily, and we could go there anytime we wanted. So we just kept going. And every night we had an investigation, I think, for a while.
For a while, yeah.
But we did capture some really neat stuff. And I remember one time that there was a blackout and the entire city went black. And Rob and I are sitting there. We're like, well, what better time to do an EVP session? So we have the recorder in the middle of the floor, and all of a sudden there was a scratching sound. It sounded like nails just scratching on the wood floor in between us. Okay, that's weird. And so I started asking questions. I said, who was walking around upstairs earlier? And it answered, I think this is the first time we had got this response, and it said, the demon. Well, from that point on, we started getting demon references in lots and lots of EVPs. And in my experience, I don't get that. We'll get, you don't get the word demon dropped on a lot of EVPs. In general, you'll hear a bunch of stuff like that on the spirit boxes, but for an EVP to be something in-house, atmospheric sounds being recorded onto that was interesting. And it hasn't stopped. We still get those.
Very, very fascinating. I'd love to get the chance to come out there and investigate with you guys. We'll have to see if we can work something out with some of our listeners and maybe come on out and spend some time there checking it out for ourselves. Now, how big is this location, by the way? I don't think we ever got through that.
It's smaller now than it was. We've lost a couple.
Smaller? What?
Yeah.
It like Rob said, 14 hotel rooms at one time. We believe that the building got separated into three pieces. And it got, we think our garage is actually part of the building. And then there was another house behind it that that was torn down upon our purchase of this location. We actually think that house was actually part of the hotel as well. So
yeah,
we're missing
an
section.
article that said they had physically split the house into three pieces to three separate residences, and they told the places, this was still in the 1800s, and I think it was early 1900s, I think it was the 1800s, and they said they had placed this piece here, there, and left this one where it was at. And according to what their description is, it is our house as we know it, the garage as we know it now, and the other house that sat behind the garage that was torn down 1 week after we purchased this. So that was kind of disheartening, knowing that could have been our missing piece that we would have loved to have had and would have gladly bought it, but that information wasn't uncovered until months later, so had no way to know.
Right. So we would love to have that section of that had the hotel rooms back, because the place, like I told you, in the Kansas plot maps would change shape every 20 years. Would be a total different configuration. What happened to this? It just disappeared.
The only thing that held true was what we have now. The pieces that we have now were the first 4 or 5 additions, and they have held true and stayed there. But everything else went from L shape to any other shape you can imagine when viewed from an aerial map. It was strange. But
so it's about 6 rooms up and about 6 rooms down, I believe.
Now, yeah.
And what's the most active point in the building for you at this point?
The original 1858 room upstairs. There's a closet there, and on a fluke, I had brought this cheap beach ball down there just as a trigger object, and Justin got tired of kicking it in the dark, and it lights up. It's one of those beach balls that lights up when you kick it. And so he stuck it up in this closet, just put it up on the shelf. But we started noticing after that fact that this beach ball, we had some folks there doing a live stream for us, and they were standing there, and all of a sudden, on their live video, this beach ball comes flying out of the closet and rolls into the other room with them, and it freaks them all out. And then they put it back, and later on in the night, it does it again.
3 times that night.
Yeah, and then so now we have it in there, and it'll sit up there for weeks at a time, 2 weeks. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, this beach ball comes flying out and goes rolling across the upstairs.
Yeah, I think we've captured it now 15 plus times. The very first time I put it up there, came back the next day, it was out. I didn't think anything of it. I stuck it right back up, and I got about 15 feet away, and the damn thing came flying out. That's when I thought, whoa. So I start looking around the closet, and interestingly, there's a bunch of initials and coat hooks. So my thought is that it was from the schoolhouse days, and this was the little cubbies that they would put their coats or whatever. And there was five sets of initials, and each one were designated to these certain hooks that ran around the perimeter of the inside of the closet. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe it was like school kids, places, and maybe that's why we're getting so much interaction with this beach ball that lights up all these colors by placing it in that closet. So then we started installing security cameras, and that would notify us on our phones if there was motion. And I never forget the first time I looked at it, and here comes this ball flying out at 3 a.m. I thought, wow, that's interesting. So we can't get back up there fast enough to reset it. So Rob and I is like, do you want to go reset the ball? Do you want to drive an hour to go put it back so we can watch it do it again? Because that's what it amounts to. We were so excited, and it just kept doing it. So we invited this group in, and they brought the news crew. It was actually a news team that was there, or one news reporter, and she was doing a Halloween special on us. And the ball flew out. She had never had a paranormal experience, and the ball flew out of the closet and was on the news. So it was very interesting.
Now, did it kind of roll out, or did it fly out? Tell me the truth.
Well, so it's up on a shelf, so it's actually above the doorway. Okay, so if I reach in, if I walk in the doorway, I would have to go up above my head and push it off to the right, and the shelf actually rolls backwards. The shelf's old, it's uneven, it doesn't slant forward. The ball has no reason to roll forward. It would always roll backwards. There's no gaps or any kind of wind, breeze that's getting it. And so when it comes out, it's actually going up a little bit of a hill, just a little slant, and then it falls, and there's some old metal hangers there, so it makes a god-awful noise once it hits those hangers. And I left them there on purpose because I thought, well, that's a good notifier that something's going on once we hear those hangers clanking. And it does come out, and a lot of times ends up across the room. So
there's also instances of those balloons being punched up in there as well. You had that instance of that, and there's like a dodgeball, which is it's heavy. It's not a beach ball, and that's been tossed off the top of the door as well. So it's not the beach ball is the most frequent, but there's been other instances of things just being moved from their location, and there's also that ping pong ball that fell out of the bathroom ceiling that time.
Another time, and I'm so grateful that a lot of this happens during our live streams so people can experience it, and it's not just me telling the story, but I was actually in the bathroom explaining, showing a virtual tour to these people who were watching, and this missing ping pong ball, this was the second time that they had went missing. These ones were missing for about a week. And this one was, and all of a sudden it falls out of nowhere and right past my head and shoulder while I'm holding the phone doing a live stream. This ball falls out of the nothingness. Just literally, there's nothing up there except a light bulb. There's no reason for me to be in the middle of the bathroom and a ball to fall straight down.
And I'm standing at the top of the stairs filming him, and I see this ball just come out of nowhere and go kapunk, kapunk.
Just drops. And it was that moment that I started noticing my equipment disappearing. And I'm talking, stuff's not like cheap. This meter I had of my favorite one, this top of the line model that he had made, and it went missing. I put it in this bathtub, which is a whole nother story, this bathtub. And it went missing. It was just Rob and I there doing an investigation. I was really upset, and it was missing for about 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And I walk into the place in the middle of the night. Rob had some new keys made. I went to check them out. I had this person with me. And I said, while we're here, I'm going to go look for my mail meter just to see if it shows back up. It had been missing for a month or two at this time. And this voice on the recorder that I had just sat down said, "What are they looking for in this room?" Just clear as day.
Wow. Really so it knew you were there.
Yeah. So A, that tells me it's intelligent. B, there was someone else there he was talking to, most likely. C, he's not the one that stole my equipment, because, if he is clueless, because he acknowledged that I was there, so he's intelligent, and there was someone with him apparently, and he didn't steal it because he had no clue what I was doing there. but it was so loud and so clear, you would have thought that it was louder than my voice on the recorder. But it wasn't, it wasn't audible for me being there. Disembodied voice, I would have heard it. It was that loud, but it was only recorded onto the recorder.
That's pretty exciting stuff. I know we got to wrap it up, guys. In wrap up, what else do you want to tell them about the location and the history of this? Rob, why don't we wrap up with you and then go to Justin to finish off?
Yeah, I mean, the place as far as paranormal activities, just there's always something new happening. We're always experiencing some different type of activity, and it's constantly seems to be changing. As far as the history, it's an Old West hotel / boarding house with a rich history of old cowboys, Civil War, Bleeding Kansas, up until the brothel times in the 20th century, and a doctor's office to boot. There's just so many multi-layers of history that, you don't always know, wow, what era are we dealing with here? What is this? Is it cowboys? Is it the 30s? Is it the 50s? We just don't know. But it's kind of like an onion. We keep peeling it and finding new stuff all the time. So I think our journey is really just starting.
All right, Justin, you get a chance to wrap it up here. What do you want everybody to know about the Garnett House Hotel, the 1858 Garnett Hotel House, and how can they find your website? What's the best way for them to locate you if they would like to investigate it and see it for themselves?
So our website is 1858hotel.com, and you can find us on almost any social media at the same name, 1858 Hotel, on Twitter and such. We do the live streams. Like I said, if they want to participate in live broadcast of the paranormal investigations or virtual tours, we do that on the Periscope platform. That's just owned by Twitter, and that's just by putting in my name, Justin Spurrier. They can follow us there and watch these things unfold as we do a lot of it live. As far as the location, like Rob said, multi-layers of different generations we're dealing with. You never know what it is. So when you come, just have an open mind and just try to feel it out and see what kind of experience you have. Don't base it off of, I hope they throw the ball out of the closet, because a lot of times it just happens anyway. So use your energy to focus on something else, because this place has not disappointed anyone. And we've only let, a handful of people through there. So it's very new to the scene, and it's not filled with people every single night. So these spirits are willing to do things, or they do them. Not that they're parlor tricks. We don't ask them to do things; they just do it, and it's a disappointment. So come out, check it out, and see for yourself.
Email us if you're interested.
Yeah, we'll put links up to that website as well. Thank you both for joining us and sharing some of this rich and haunted history. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. And for all of you, check out our website. You'll be able to see all of the links to our guest stuff. So when you're downloading the podcast, you'll be able to find the link there as well. 1858hotel.com is the best way to start it off. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader. This is Beyond the Darkness.